Okay, well, welcome to episode 6 of Healthy, Simplified, Mind, Body, and Spirit. My name is Mike Keenan.
Suzanne Grennan here.
And as always, we have our producer, engineer, Christian. Christian, how are you today?
I'm good, man. It's been so long. What's going on?
Weeks go fast. Well, we learned last week that Christian is an authoritative person on cooking and air frying, so we encouraged him, if he wants to chime in at any point in time, he should feel free to just join us in our conversation.
Air fry your vitamins, people.
No, we definitely
don't do that. Don't do that.
Okay. Well, we're gonna jump in. We're still on DNA and nutrition.
Correct.
And this week we're gonna focus more a little bit on vitamins, minerals, and cofactors and how they affect our nutrition. So I'll kind of get the ball rolling if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
And let's go ahead and just jump up to that slide. Christian, on vitamins. Okay, so first we have vitamin A, vitamin D, and vitamin E.
Well, again, Tom, this is again from our DNA books.
Yes, that's a very good point.
This will go through all the information, right?
For those who don't recall, last episode was the DNA books episode. So if you're a little behind, go check that one out.
Absolutely.
So yeah, now you're up to speed.
Yeah. So basically, the reason we picked these 6 to talk about that you see on the screen now is these things came out in our DNA test. If there's a deficit, you'll see that. So, for example, here, this happens to be, this is Suzanne's slide, actually, on her vitamins, just so you know. So when I start talking about me and my vitamin D in the middle, I'm going to talk a little bit about my problems with vitamin D. But let's just kind of give you a kind of an overview of vitamins as a whole,
exactly,
and why they're important in our DNA test. So vitamin A, D, and E, all three of them are what's called fat-soluble vitamins. That means they need to be carried into the body on a molecule of fat. So it's important that you do have healthy sources of fat in your diet. And as you take these vitamins, they'll be in a capsule, and they'll have something called a carrier oil in it. Let me spend a quick minute on that, on what a carrier oil is all about. Okay, so we know these vitamins are fat-soluble. They need to be carried in on a molecule of fat. So if you have a capsule, and I'm just going to use my fingers so if a capsule is that big, okay, the amount of vitamin A, D, or E in that capsule is going to be almost infinitesimal. You can't even see it. It's so small, okay? The reason you want to take a good quality vitamin mineral supplement is that you want a carrier oil that's not going to become rancid. Right. If you get the cheaper brands, I'm not going to mention any names out there, but if you happen to walk into one of those stores that sell 10,000 vitamins, and there's a multitude of them up on the shelf, okay? If it uses an inferior carrier oil, that carrier oil can become rancid. If it becomes rancid, it'll oxidize the vitamin, and you get net nothing. So even though you're only paying $6 or $7 for a bottle of vitamins, it could be a bottle of nothing. So the vitamins that we happen to take, that we advocate, for example, in the vitamin D, okay, they actually put a drop of vitamin E in the vitamin D so that it helps to preserve the oil. So you want a good carrier oil. That's an important thing. I wanted to get a point across. So with vitamin A, for example, vitamin A is a fat-soluble vitamin. You would see it as referred to as retinol or carotenoids. It helps the immune system tremendously and is important for vision. So what they say, rabbits, right? They eat all those carrots. They have good eyesight, right? And it's also important for reproduction. Now, we have a good friend whose wife had trouble, he and his wife had trouble conceiving for many, many years. And they went from doctor to doctor and all that. And one of the things that they were told is that you have to optimize your nutrition, because if you don't have certain nutrients in place, your body can't perform certain tasks. So vitamin A is very important for reproduction. With vitamin D, again, another fat-soluble vitamin, and it is very, very important for the absorption of calcium. Okay, so in children in countries where there's not optimal nutrition and vitamin D, they develop things like rickets in children. In adults, especially with women, they can have vitamin D deficiencies, can lead to things like osteoporosis. Okay, and it's also vital for your immune system. Okay, vitamin D. And then last is vitamin E. Now,
Where do you get vitamin D, Mike?
vitamin D, the number one place to get vitamin D is sunshine. And we're going to talk about that one because I happen to have issues with vitamin D. So I'm going to
Get
go
into
into
that.
But the best place, absolute best place to get vitamin D, you're absolutely right, is sunshine. Okay. And we could touch a little bit about why some people avoid the sun and
Right.
why
It's true.
they should because of their diet. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then vitamin E. Vitamin E is also a fat-soluble vitamin. Deficiencies are rare, but if there is a deficiency, it's usually due to the body's inability to digest fat. Now, what did I say earlier? Fat-soluble vitamins, right, need to be absorbed on a molecule of fat. So if you have trouble breaking down and absorbing fat, you're probably also going to have a problem absorbing vitamin E. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we kind of go through this. But now Suzanne's going to lay on a little bit here on the B vitamins and what their importance
I will.
are.
And the thing with B vitamins, I'm just trying to look for my B12 because I want to just read on that. But listen, B vitamins have always been my favorite. Like I said, again, at a young age, listening to my body. You know, it's funny because stress is a real factor with that. And I guess when I started college, I guess there was a little stress because I really try to do well and whatnot. So I would break out. I think I said this in another episode. I would get these blind pimples. Well, my B vitamins were the excellent source for me that helped get rid of that because it takes care of your stress. It's good for brain function. It's good for your nerves, everything. And the nerves, again, help your stress. I'm going to get into B6. I was just looking for my B12. So when you look at B6, B6 is needed for healthy brain development, like I said, and function. And its role in the body's production of neurotransmitters, which is your serotonin, and your how do you say it? Norepinephrine.
One of your stress hormones. So you talked about stress.
Stress, that's what I'm talking. And melatonin, which helps regulate the body's clock. So that's where B6 is great. And I, had issues with that. But what my DNA tells me, you should eat more foods high in vitamin B6 because you have increased clearance, which means I pee a lot.
Right.
So I clear them out of your body. So your B vitamins are water soluble. They're not fat soluble. They're not going to store in your body as long. So you do need to replace them. B9 now is my other big vitamin because this is where my DNA told me about that my body does not really produce folate. So folate refers to both the natural folates found in food and in folic acid, but folic acid is synthetic.
That's
and
true.
That's found in fortified foods and supplements, folic acid. But folate is essential for brain development and nerve function. So again, there you go for me. It helps control levels of homocysteine in your body, which is an amino acid that may be associated with heart disease. Now, there's other things your body does that doesn't necessarily mean it's true, but if you were to have high amounts, you'd want to be careful and have your heart checked. But also an inadequate folate status during pregnancy, and this really scared me when I read this, increases the risk of certain birth defects like spinal bifida, brain defects. And it scared me because I'm thinking, here I am, I had 5 children, and I never knew that I had, it's called the mutation, the MTHFR mutation.
That's correct.
And again, it's also an enzyme. We're going to get into that, but it really made me nervous to think that if I didn't take my B vitamins and didn't eat healthy, any one of my 5 kids could have had issues.
Absolutely.
So that's scary.
Well, if I can just chime in real quick, because you make some very good points. There's a lot of people that think that by taking folic acid, they got their bases covered on that.
Right.
And what have we discovered in the last couple of years? We've been doing all this research and listening to very, very smart people, is that if you're MTHFR deficient, you could take all the folic acid in the world, it's not going to get absorbed. It needs to be a methylated version of folate. Now, we were also talking earlier in the week about your abundance of green plant food you've always eaten.
Exactly.
So you were getting natural forms of folate,
Mm-hmm.
even though you might have been taking folic acid unsuspectingly that it wasn't really going to help you. But your diet, whole food diet, is what really helped you have 5 healthy kids.
You got that right.
Yeah. So,
So yeah, it's the methylfolate for sure.
right.
And again, that's one key thing with our DNA, with the vitamins that we take. A lot of companies and their vitamins, they don't have the methylated folate
No.
in their B vitamins. So
No, and I had a woman come in today, and she was showing me a drink that she drank, and she was showing me all the list of ingredients. And we've been guilty of like calling other companies out there putting what I call label paint on their products. It's just basically they throw something up there to make it look good,
Right.
because people really aren't educated into specifics. So she showed me this thing, and it had folic acid in it, and I said, that's really not the form you want to take it in. You want to take it as a folate. And then you're going to talk about B12. The B12 that a lot of these companies throw on there is something called cyanocobalamin, which is a synthetic version of B12, as opposed to the methylcobalamin, which you should be getting. And you look for a good quality vitamin, that's what you want. So she said to me, well, I looked at this hydrating drink you have. Why doesn't it have all this stuff on it? I said, well, we sell an excellent pharmaceutical grade vitamin. We don't need to put it in everything because you're already
Right.
taking it.
right.
And if you're following a good, healthy diet with a lot of green plant food, you're getting a lot of that anyway. So, yeah.
Exactly true. So your B12, okay, again, it's good for the functioning of your brain and your nervous system, but it's also required for your blood cells and to regulate DNA synthesis. So synthesis.
Synthesis,
I can't talk
right.
anymore.
That's all right.
But a deficiency of B12 is more often related to poor intestinal B12 absorption rather than dietary deficiency. But here's the funny thing in my DNA, this is what it tells me. My profile, okay, your genetic profile is associated with higher vitamin B12, so I don't really need B12.
You don't need a lot of it.
A lot of it,
Right.
okay. So it comes in. So I have the levels. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about my B6 and B9. But as well as relative resistance toward certain pathogenic infections. So that's a good thing for me.
It's a very good thing.
Okay? But in my profile, it also is associated with lower concentrations of certain beneficial bacteria in the intestines. So here we go back to our gut health
That's
again.
right.
So it is just telling me here that I need to take probiotics.
That's right.
That is my makeup. There's nothing that I'm going to do that's going to change that.
No, absolutely
right?
not. No. And we've talked about, the good bacteria in the gut and how important it is for our immune system and also for the proper digestion and absorption of the
Correct.
nutrients.
Correct.
So we have a symbiotic relationship with that good gut bacteria. They help us. We feed them the right thing. We've been talking, really trying to stress in these last couple talks. The only food substrates that get down to where this bacteria live comes in the form of fiber. Yeah. So if because the protein breaks down in the stomach, most of your simple carbohydrates are absorbed in the upper GI tract and the small
Correct.
intestine. The only thing that's encapsulated, or if you want to use that term,
Well, it's your prebiotic
right? Well, exactly.
and your fiber.
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. You just hit the nail right on the head. That's exactly it.
And it makes it all the way down to the colon.
That's right, and that's
That's
where
where all the magic happens.
That's right. So, but a lot of us were teaching that fiber was nothing more than an intestinal broom just to keep things cleaned out. And that we know now, we realize that's really not the case. It's bringing the food that survives the digestion process in the upper GI tract to deliver it down to where it's needed in the lower GI tract in the large intestines.
You got it.
Wow, this is so good. I think we're learning so much. Hopefully you guys are learning something along the way too. That's our goal. So let's talk a little bit about special needs, because our DNA test was here to identify to us, here we have our little DNA test, specific needs that I have. Now in episode number 5, which you saw last week, we talked about how Michael has problems with inflammation due to his inability or highly sensitivity to carbohydrates. and those fried foods I talked about, but how well I do with healthy fats. It actually is very, very good for me. But it also identified another problem that I have. I have a special need with vitamin D. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of read a little bit of what I wrote here. I have an extra need for vitamin D. My body's ability to bind and transfer vitamin D and its metabolites is compromised. So I need to eat vitamin D rich foods, things like salmon and tuna and eggs, right? So that is going to help me out tremendously. Now, we also mentioned earlier the best source of vitamin D for me too is sunshine. And I mentioned earlier some people are avoiding the sun. Okay. The number one reason to avoid the sun is if you're eating very, very poor fats. Because when the sun hits those trans fats, hydrogenated oils, and those unhealthy fats in your skin, it can be a source of being a carcinogen. But if you're eating walnuts and olive oil and tuna, not a big deal. What else did we learn about the other night with the ability to handle the sun is if you have a diet in green plant food, spirulina, chlorella, okay, these things are going to help you tremendously to protect your skin against the sun. The other thing is there are certain people who grew up in whose heritage is from different areas of the world that tolerate the sun better than others because that's where they lived for thousands and thousands of years. So if you're from Scandinavia, you probably don't want to hang out in the sun too much. But if you're of Italian heritage like myself, you know, in Mediterranean, I tend to tolerate the sun a whole lot better. But with that being said, I still have needs, special needs with my vitamin D. So, you know, what are some of the things I mentioned earlier, you know, with vitamin D deficiencies? The rickets, osteoporosis, immune function, cancer, and inflammation.
Now, let me ask you this.
Sure.
To absorb vitamin D, what else is needed? You talked to that before.
You mean
Does
with
it helps to break it down? Was it magnesium or calcium?
well, no, okay, you mentioned earlier, yes, with calcium, yeah, there is a connection with vitamin D and calcium. See, what happens is if you want to absorb calcium into the body, I'm sorry, I'm getting too far away from my microphone, I just realized. If you don't have enough vitamin D in your diet, you have trouble absorbing calcium, and that's what causes the rickets in children and osteoporosis in adults.
Correct.
Yep, absolutely. So you're going to tell us a little bit about some of your special needs now.
Well, we already kind of touched base on it. And basically, again, it's going back to, you know, my B6 that, and trust me, I take Bs, I'll take them morning and evening because I drink a lot of water. Even before I knew I drank a lot of water when I was in school, like I could go to the bathroom every hour on the hour, if not more. It's just, again, the way my body works. So it's because I just deplete them faster. So I need the Bs, being, again, Bs are water soluble. And then we already talked about, you know, my problem with the folate. I have the, you know, the MTHFR gene, okay, which means I don't have an enzyme that actually activates folate. And that's why I need to take methylfolate to the group. The activated folate goes on to the neurotransmitters, it creates immune cells, processes hormones, it produces energy, and it detoxifies chemicals. So that's why it's very key for me. And it's crucial in the reduced risk for, again, birth defects that we talked about and developing children during early pregnancy. So, again, I was very lucky with that. So I'm grateful for my Bs.
That's right. So there's a lot more information in these DNA tests. And, you know, the nice thing we're going to talk about real quick is that so many people have come to me and said, well, I'm genetically predisposed to have these other issues. And we've been able to kind of say, no, it's your diet and your nutrition and your lifestyle, lack of exercise, lack of sleep, lack of hydration, that is probably causing these problems. Because when we start looking at your DNA, that's not true. So the first one I want to touch on is body weight. And when I look at mine, it says normal susceptibility to obesity, which means that I have no right to be over my goal weight. You know, the genes that they tested and then the and then the personal guidance. Now remember, in the last episode I mentioned that in this blue section here, this is specific to me, to Mike Keenan, what I should and shouldn't be doing. So what does it talk about? It says you got to eat healthy, plenty of fruits and vegetables, and remove the calorie-rich temptations. Stay hydrated and exercise, and do specific exercise. Now, in episode number 7, when we get there,
But you're like me, so you're not high on that.
yeah, but if
scale.
you look at the two of us, you're very lean, and I tend to have an ability to carry more
what
stored
does
body
it
fat.
say? It says because I'm probably more cautious.
That's right, because you're probably more cautious. But I don't have to have extreme cautiousness.
Right, right.
We've both looked at people's studies that were, talking about inflammation stuff. They're prone to inflammation. They have high susceptibility to carbohydrate, high susceptibility of fat. And then some of these other things that we're going to mention here, they also have issues with. But it's important to realize that it says here, be sure to stay hydrated and follow guidance below to achieve and maintain healthy body weight. So I really have no right to say, oh, it's not my genetics fault
Right,
with
right,
my weight.
right.
It's me. I got to
Right.
look in the mirror and say it's all on me. What about some other things we could talk
Okay,
about?
so we're talking about weight regain now. And this is where I go back to saying, I hate the word diet because it's really basically you have to create a lifestyle that fits you, fits your genetic makeup, fits your body, fits you mentally, where you're happy. But what happens with weight regain, after you diet or maybe you do a long cleanse or whatever, your body's response after that is it thinks it's in starvation mode.
Mm-hmm.
So your body then, it's yearning to get more calories, but this is where, you have to be strong here
Mm-hmm.
and understand now if you get to a desired weight, maybe you're only starting out with 5 or 10 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
But if you lose that weight, now you're dropping how many calories you're going to need.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have to tell your body, no, I don't want that. That's where your resistance comes in. Because if you eat it again, you're going to gain more weight back. Your body
Mm-hmm.
just wants to eat more. And it's kind of like it'll lead into impulsive eating. So I'm just going to jump into that.
No,
okay?
go
We're gonna
ahead.
skip
Please do.
around,
You
'cause
go ahead.
It flows in together, all right? So, when you're on a diet, which I hate to say, when you're making transition to becoming healthier,
Mm-hmm.
it's not that you stop, actually. You can have cheat days or whatever, whether it's 1 or 2.
Mm-hmm.
I always said never deprive yourself. Listen, I'll have an Oreo cookie. I'm lucky that, again, it was over time that I was able to, have 2 bites of something.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like I said, I'm more of a savory palate. So if I have something spicy and I'm out to dinner and someone says, well, I'm going to order cheesecake, I got my spoon ready.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
ready. I'm taking a bite, but I'm not eating the whole thing. So it's training yourself and your brain to do that. It's not like I wasn't born that way.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we were little, my brother would go through the cookies and all that stuff so fast. Realistically, we used to pour sugar on bread and eat sugar sandwiches. How great was that? Okay.
Is that French
So-
toast?
that wasn't even cooked. But so what happens with impulsive eating and addictive tendencies, it's the same thing. It's basically your body's telling you that it wants more because it wants that comfort food, that reward.
Right.
And what it does when you eat something good, it spikes your dopamine.
Yes.
Okay.
And serotonin.
Now, if you have that resistance, okay, if you have that enzyme where you don't produce as much dopamine as you're supposed to and it's not enough, then it's telling you again, your body's saying, I want more.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah,
And then
and
you go
you-
back to
right.
eating more again. And it's this vicious cycle that you go through. So you have to just push that sugar away.
Well, remember, with your, I'm going to jump in on what you're talking about here. We've been talking about the power couple and how that affects serotonin, dopamine, blood sugar stability. So for a lot of people, like I put a post up on Facebook the other day. So if anyone saw my Facebook page, it said, what do I want? I said, well, I want to walk 2 doors down to the Dairy Queen and get a
right.
Blizzard. But what will I do? I took a picture of the power couple. So if you guys don't know what it is yet, you got to look at my Facebook page. But you know what? 10 minutes after I did that, I felt great. And you know what? I felt great the rest of the day because I know that I'm doing things that are healthy for me because I just turned 57. I'm not getting any younger. I want to maintain that strength. I want to maintain my energy. You know, I've lost some weight over the last couple of months. If you watch the first episode of the podcast and now we are now, you're like, gee, Mike, looks like you lost some weight. I have.
You did.
And I really feel much better. So those are the kind of things with addictive tendencies and impulse eating that you can really start to say, what is it that my body really needs and how can I deliver it so that and we were talking about that with mindset the other day from that video we were watching.
Yes.
If you develop that mindset, you really don't want it. You're like, I really don't need it. I don't want it.
Well, actually, you know what? Your body will tell you once you start to eliminate things out of your diet, so to say,
Right.
out of your food intake. I hate the word diet, but okay, how do I put it? What happens when you start eating the processed foods and whatnot? Your body starts to crave it. And I know for me, like if I start eating chocolate, I crave chocolate. If I start eating a lot of salt, I crave salt. Okay, so it's kind of like a habitual thing that we're creating, and habits are key. So that's why we're saying mindset is key. But what also happens in your body is you could be eating all this food, you'll feel full, but your body itself still wants the real nutrition that it needs.
Yes.
And that's, again, what makes you eat more. You know, because
Yeah.
your body's, your insides, your
Right.
genes are telling you we need the good stuff.
Right. If you eat a lot of empty calories and your body's not getting the nutrients, it's going to keep your hunger drive, keep your ghrelin going.
There you go.
Because your body says we didn't get what we needed, so
Yeah.
just keep eating. If you eat a little more, we may get it. You know, I'll dovetail into appetite right now. It says, you know, here again, I have a normal risk of overeating and I have a normal appetite. That's very true. And since I've eliminated some of those pro-inflammatory foods, I'm finding that I don't overeat. The reason that I typically did overeat in the past was because I was eating those carbohydrate-rich foods, which I'm very sensitive to, and it caused that insulin spike. Because again, you're starting to see how we're kind of talking about
Yes.
past episodes and things we've kind of touched base on. That insulin spike is what kept the ghrelin going, suppressed my leptin levels, and I would eat a whole thing of Ritz crackers. I mean, that was very easy for me to do. The other thing we were talking about earlier is I used to go to football practice at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I used to eat lunch at 12. So I had nothing to eat between 12 and like 6 o'clock. What do you think my hunger drive was at 6 o'clock when I got home? I couldn't eat enough. And then my mother, God bless her, she's wonderful. Eggplant parmesan, garlic bread, pasta.
Eat.
You know, more carbohydrate. So no wonder I had issues. But hey, listen, I tell people all the time, I got into this industry to fix myself, and everyone else gets the benefit. All right, let me just touch base on bitter taste and cholesterol. You know, there's a lot of reasons why we have issues with bitter taste, and you were talking about it earlier, is that there's certain foods that are toxic, and if it doesn't taste good, we probably didn't eat it back in our hunter-gatherer days. But it's so funny because you can train your palate, too, to eat healthy. I've had people come in, and I've mentioned some of the really good foods like the romaine lettuce and the spinach and the broccoli and the kale and all that kind of stuff. And then they go like, I don't like that. And I'm like, well, you have the palate of a 3-year-old.
It's
Come
called
on.
olive oil and garlic.
That's right. You know, you can put olive oil and garlic on almost anything. It'll help. So, and the other thing it tells us in our DNA test, I happen to have I'm a super taster, by the way, of bitter.
Oh, I am too.
I have an issue with that, yeah.
But you know what? But again, you teach yourself. Like, I love arugula. I'm going to tell you, dandelion greens, they're tough for me. The ones that are very bitter, I don't know, maybe to some people they're not. Like you're saying, they might not have that, but saute them, and not for a long period of time, but it just really helps to take the bitterness. And you can stick them in cold water first, then take them out and saute them.
Yep, I'll tell you, you put olive oil on anything I can get past. I can't do broccoli, Rob. I just can't. My body doesn't want it. Okay. And the cholesterol response, you know, when you are prone to inflammation and you're carbohydrate sensitive, you do your tests and your blood tests come back, you're going to have problems with cholesterol. So you really have to work hard on it. Now I will tell you, and I might have said this on one of the episodes, I've been really working on that. My triglycerides are down to 62.
That's excellent.
My normal my cholesterol, overall cholesterol, is about 200. I'm still fighting the LDL, but what's amazing. We won't talk much about this now. My HDL is not coming up, and my LDL is staying high. So there's still something in my physiology I haven't figured out yet. Because as soon as I can get that HDL up, my LDL should start to drop. Again, trying to stay away from processed sugars, processed carbohydrates, refined carbohydrates. It's probably going to help me more long term. Okay. Did you want to mention something about lactose?
Oh, lactose. So lactose is actually the sugar that's in milk. And, again, we talked about this coming up, and we talked about, again, when we were first put on this planet and we're hunter and gatherers, we didn't have cow's milk, right?
No.
We're going back. So we're really not supposed to drink it. I mean, it came, when did it come around? What century
Well, we
was
started
that?
domesticating animals. And it's funny
Yeah.
because I'm of a Mediterranean heritage. I'm more Italian than I am Irish. Well, my ancestors was sheep and
Sheep and
goats.
goat. Yeah.
There was no cows. There's no cows in Italy.
I know. So
know?
they're actually saying, like, children after the age of 2, really, it's not necessary for them.
Right. The other thing you're going to find out, too, is you're going to start to see the A2 milk becoming more and more
Yes.
popular. And they won't tell you this, but I'll tell you this because I've obviously been in the field for a long time. There's a lot of experts that will say unequivocally that the reason for type 1 diabetes is due to the antibody response of A1 milk, which is from the Holstein cow, which is a cow, a Northern European cow. It's a cow that wasn't around, in history. It was a hybridized cow. The reason it gives more milk and it gives milk for a longer period of time. But there's a lot of very credible research that type 1 diabetes is when people drink this milk, they have a autoimmune response to it. It causes the antibodies to form on the beta cells of the pancreas, and it basically kills the beta cells, so you stop producing insulin. So you're insulin dependent the rest of your life.
I know. Now, what's funny, too, with the DNA, we had a friend of ours who found out that she was lactose intolerant, right? She had no idea. Usually you will have signs. You could be bloated, gassy, whatever. She had no signs, but what we found out was, like, she kept gaining weight, right? She could not lose weight, and it was because of the lactose.
Right. I
Yeah.
agree. All right, I'll kind of wrap it up with a little bit of caffeine, and you can finish with alcohol. How does that sound? So it turns out I have an increased sensitivity to caffeine. I did not know that. I found this out through my DNA test.
I do, too.
Yeah. So what I do is I try to drink my coffee in the morning, and then I try to back off later in the day. So I do have something that has a little bit of caffeine in it, but it's such a low level, it doesn't really affect me. And I usually don't have trouble falling asleep and staying asleep. So, I guess maybe I've conditioned my body a little bit to it, but I am being more mindful about how much caffeine I have. And the only thing I drink that has caffeine is coffee. I don't drink soda. I can't think of any other caffeinated
Right,
beverages.
and you have to really watch, like, all these energy drinks that you drink that are loaded with sugar and all those things too, and you get that spike again. For me, it's funny because a lot of people they like Rook coffee, they like Starbucks coffee. All that is way too strong for me.
Yeah.
I tend to lean towards tea more, but if I'm drinking coffee or any of those drinks with caffeine, I tend to water them down because I am sensitive. And, I don't guzzle my drinks down either, so I'll drink it throughout the day, and I just have that. I'm not tired. It keeps me mentally focused. You know what I mean? Keeps my energy level consistent.
Right. That you talk about, the energy. We'll bring that up. My son drinks it. He doesn't drink coffee, but it's something in the energy that gives him that mental clarity, and I think it's the tyrosine effect.
That's right.
It does. It really. It makes a big difference.
Energy drink,
Yes,
so.
we do.
But again, it's personalized how you use it. Okay, so how much you use, and again, listen to your body, right? And it's the same when it comes to alcohol, people. Alcohol's great, isn't it? It makes you feel good, but it's really not the best thing for you.
Well, the one thing I always tell my clients, they say, what can I drink and still lose weight? And the bottom line is this. Once
Exactly.
you put alcohol in your body treats it like a toxin. It shuts fat metabolism down completely. So, if you drink an alcohol that comes from grain, whether that be whiskey or
gonna
rye
say.
or vodka or beer, you're getting a double whammy because you're getting both alcohol and you're getting the grain. So it's like liquid fat. It's just going to put weight on you.
What do we love? Tequila.
Tequila, right? That's actually not bad.
But
But
I
you-
don't really love the taste.
Well, again,
so that's tough for me too.
What did I say earlier? Is I still have problems with inflammation. I'm at a high risk of inflammation. So alcohol is a pro-inflammatory compound. So what did I do? We talked about this earlier. I went to Paris. I ate bread,
Okay.
cheese, and drank wine, and gained 10 pounds in like a week.
And what I found too, and I used to laugh at this because my mother-in-law, God rest her soul, when I was first married, we'd go out, to dinner, and she would have one drink, and she'd be like so giddy and this and that. I'm like, what is with her, But I'm finding now that as we get older, I can't tolerate alcohol like I did. One glass of wine, and I'm like, whoop-de-doo. And of course, what happens, folks, like, what's the first thing that happens when you go out to dinner? They don't feed you food right away. They give you a drink first off. So I make sure that they bring me water first.
Right.
And you're not supposed to, but I put ice in my wine if I'm having a glass of wine. Sometimes I even pour water in it.
Yeah.
Just so I don't get loopy.
Okay.
Sometimes it's
I
fun,
think
though.
we really hit the nutrition end hard on this DNA test. Now, I'm going to tell you, we're only halfway through the DNA test because in the next episodes, we're going to be talking about DNA and exercise and very specific as to what people should be doing and how long they should be doing it, what intensity they should be doing it at,
yeah.
because your DNA is going to dictate how your body is going to respond to exercise. And we're going to find out that some people really don't lose weight when they exercise.
That's true.
Isn't that crazy?
That's our friend.
And people
yeah.
saying, "Oh, I can exercise and it'll take care of my weight problem."
Right,
I'm
and
like,
sometimes they over-exercise, so they're doing more damage.
we're going to talk about metabolic damage from exercise, because even though I own a gym, I will tell you that certain people are exercising completely inappropriately. They're never going to hit their goal, and they're just going to be tired, sore, and really frustrated. So, again, I just want to thank everyone for joining us this week. Christian, again, thank you so much for everything. Suzanne, I think you really came across with some really great points now. And I think
Well,
being a mom and talking about folic acid and folate, I think you're going to relate to a lot of women out there who don't understand the importance.
Well, the one thing about that, too, I forgot to mention is because back then, too, you have to remember, so my kids are, over 20 and higher, so our food was a lot better back then. It was a lot cleaner. So it is important now to really watch, be careful, and, supplementation isn't, what did we say it was?
it's not a replacement, it's a supplement. Yeah.
Right.
So you still want to go with good whole food nutrition, but I will tell you there's some tremendous nutrition gaps out there. And due to the DNA study, we both found out that
Yeah.
even despite our best diets, we still need to supplement because we have special needs. And
Exactly.
until you
That's
take
very well put.
until you take a DNA test, you're not really sure where you lie in that.
Exactly.
So, I mean, you can do a DNA test on a 2-year-old and just think of the differences in their life growing up, knowing that they may be MTHFR deficient at age 2. Now you can start to not just supplement, you can start to change their diet.
Oh, yeah.
Or what about if you have a teenager, like 13-year-old boy, girl, saying, "Mom, I'm gaining weight. I don't know what's going on." Well, if you understand when we talk about exercise, we can change people's lives with this
Yeah.
information.
And brain function.
And brain
right?
function,
There you
everything.
go,
All right.
everything.
Well, listen,
So,
thanks again so much
All right.
for joining us. We're looking forward to taking this DNA to the next level with DNA and exercise. But until then, God bless, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for watching. Reach out, comment, give us some feedback. Anything that we can help you with, please don't hesitate.
Yep.
All right?
Like, share, and comment. We love
Okay.
it. Take
Love
care.
you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.